Is Miller Moss's time being wasted?
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Culkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC, which is part of the Locked On Network, your first listen every day. Whether you're watching the show on YouTube, wherever you want to download your podcast, the show is free. The show always appreciates your support. Thank you again. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I've really been hoping to avoid this scenario. I think everybody was. Everyone was rooting for it. You know, Miller Moss to be the guy, help lead this team to the promised land. I'm not saying you can't do it, but last week, I started to bring it up, kind of broach the subject a little bit. And I said, depending on how this game went against Penn State, 2024, the rest of the season, it could go one of two ways, right? USC, they win, they're 4-2. Everything, all the cards are still there. They can get to the 12-team playoff. You lose, you're 3-3, and I said this game was their first of 8 straight playoff games. I didn't get it done. Doing seven straight playoff games. So yeah, playoff game, wild card game number 1. They had their chances, didn't get the win, and it seems like Miller Moss, starting quarterback, is taking a lot of heat, specifically for missing that throw to Deuce Robinson on the last offensive drive during regulation play. Look, let's be honest. Miller needs to deliver that throw. He knows it. But fair or not, this season, right now, USC is 3-3. That's with Miller playing as the starting quarterback, playing all the significant snaps of each of these first 6 games. And unfortunately, all anyone's going to remember is, Miller had that chance to, kind of drive that winning nail home, to be the hammer, to be that guy, be the dude. Unfortunately, he missed, and now he's taking the brunt of the blame for the loss. Look, I get it. The offensive line protected a little bit better, much better than they have recently. But I think with what's happened up to this point of the season, Miller is, like I said, he's hearing footsteps. And last week, this game against Penn State, he was just off. Not awful, he was just off. And so now I'm wondering if, because of the state of the offensive line, I'm wondering if Miller's time at USC is being wasted. And I know that sounds harsh, like he's not getting the development he deserves. That's not how I'm trying to explain it. Again, because of, the offensive line being really inconsistent with pass protection, Miller not being the most mobile guy on the roster, do those two work hand in hand together? But patience, loyalty, leadership, being a tough son of a bitch, those are all his strongest attributes. And he's displayed all of that all year long. But unfortunately, as I was saying, those skills aren't enough right now to be USC starting quarterback when the offensive line, they can't cover up his physical limitations. I mean, think about it this way. I mean, when you watch Miller play, it kind of looks like, if you're old enough to understand this analogy, that dude's getting hit more times than Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier hit each other combined in their fights. And yeah, that's a little bit of hyperbole, but he's taking way too many shots. And so while football is a contact sport, it's a violent sport. That's not what the quarterback signs up for. He's not signing up to say, hey, you know what? I'm a tackling dummy. I'm willing to take as many shots as possible. I mean, there's a reason why the NFL and even college football put so many rules in place to protect the quarterback from unnecessary abuse. Seems like Miller Moss's offensive line can't protect him from unnecessary abuse, and neither can Miller, not when he needs to. Again, it's not a knock. It's just kind of, it is what it is. We have to start looking at it from a pragmatic point of view. The offensive line needs to take some responsibility for, and I'm saying breaking Miller Moss. If you want him to be the hammer driving those nails home, they weren't protecting their best tool. And now, whatever Miller's physical limitations are, again, they're not being protected. And I think it's gotten to the point where people are going to start looking to him as a scapegoat. Well, let's just change quarterbacks and see what happens. That's what happens when something's broken. You have to replace it. I'm not saying Miller is broken in the sense that he's not, he can't play the position. I'm saying the quarterback position itself with him right now is broken. And I don't know if there's enough time, to kind of to get it fixed. So you replace it with a new hammer, a new quarterback. Like I said, fair or not, Miller's time at USC, and I know this sounds harsh, but it feels like it's being wasted because he can't get that consistent pass protection, allowing him to set up, follow through on his throws, maybe even give the wide receiver core more opportunity to gain separation. Because, let's be honest, when Miller gets the enough protection, he's pretty damn good. But right now he's expected to be perfect, and that's not fair. The offensive line, I said it, they did a decent job against Penn State. Penn State's got one of the best defensive lines in the country. And Miller wasn't bad. I mean, let me just give you some of his numbers. He was 20 of 34, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He completed 59% of his passes. In contrast, he only missed one more pass than Penn State's Drew Allar. He was 30 of 43. So Miller missed 14. Drew was incomplete 13 times. But, Penn State threw for 391 yards. Actually, 400 total. Their tight end even got into the action. So again, he wasn't bad, but he just seemed off all game. The accuracy wasn't there. The timing with the wide receivers wasn't clicking. So while we'll never know if Michael Lance, USC's place kicker, makes the field goal attempt in regulation instead of the one he missed in overtime. Again, not pointing the finger. I'm just kind of, USC was setting themselves up for a field goal to end regulation. They ended up with that opportunity in overtime. So again, Miller's getting the blame because he wasn't able to complete that pass to Deuce. Maybe even take one more play, get it even a little bit closer. But again, that USC never got the chance to kick the field goal during regulation, and he's getting a little bit of heat for that, a little bit of shade. So again, now we're at the point of the season. Where are we at? We're 3-3. There's really nothing left to play for as far as, postseason aspirations. Yeah, you want to get into a good bowl game. But right now, you just got through the bulk of the meat of your schedule. You still have UCLA and Notre Dame there on the back end. That's what you're playing for. See if you can get to 9-3. That'd be great. But again, they had a chance to build momentum at home against a top 5 team. Didn't happen. So is Miller's time as starting quarterback? Is it coming to an end? Does Lincoln Riley start looking forward to the future? I'm not saying I support the idea, but fair or not, it's about what's best for the team. And also Miller's health. I mean, if you replace Miller Moss, that's an easier fix than trying to fix the offensive line during the season. You just want them to continue to develop and get better, more cohesive. Maybe that happens against the lesser competition remaining on USC's schedule. And it's also easier to replace the quarterback than the wide receivers who haven't been helping Miller Moss when his accuracy was good. A lot of drop passes this year. So that brings us to Jaden Mayaba, the backup quarterback. Look, he hasn't taken any physical abuse yet. But he's shown when he was the starter at UNLV last year as a freshman that he's willing to run away from the physical attacks that come at him. You know, he'll use his legs. And I'm not saying that Mayaba isn't as tough at playing the quarterback position, but he does have that athleticism that Moss doesn't have. And he's able to escape when the offensive line can't pass protect. You saw that last year with Caleb Williams. You know, Lincoln Riley likes mobile quarterbacks. So, again, we're comparing two different styles of quarterbacks. Miller Moss versus Jaden Mayaba, who's 6'4", 225 pounds. And if you think about it this way, you know, essentially by running away, Mayaba can defend himself better than the offensive line can protect for the quarterback. So can he be the quarterback for the rest of the year? Or is Moss... I think Moss has still earned the right to finish what he started. Again, I am not suggesting bench Miller. He is not the reason USC's not winning these games. Everybody's got a big hand in this right now. But next year, you know, he still has a chance to come back for another year. Mayaba will be a full year into the playbook. And we, again, as I mentioned, we know Coach Riley likes those athletic quarterbacks. History shows that. And then, you know, you still have Julian Lewis, who's still on schedule to be a Trojan in 2025, early enrollee. So he'll be there in the spring. The competition's going to step up. So is Miller's time limited as USC starting quarterback? When does that really start to come into focus? Do you just write him out for the rest of the year? Because of, again, the chances of making the playoffs, slim and none. And Slim left the building on Saturday afternoon. I don't know. Tough question. But that's why Lincoln Riley is getting paid the big bucks to be USC's head coach. We'll see what happens. Again, I anticipate Miller being the starter when they arrive to play Maryland this weekend. But again, something to think about, something to talk about, something that I'm not trying to talk into coming to fruition, but we got to throw it out there. We're going to talk about who else deserves more playing time, potentially, in the next segment. When you're hiring for a small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. Same thing when you're coaching college football. You want to have the best top-tier players that you can choose from. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has tools to help you find the right professionals for your team, and they do it faster, and they do it for free. And LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals. That's with a B. B for billion, P for professionals. And that's going to make it the best place to hire your next employee. And hiring is super easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses, they get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. And thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. They know you don't have a lot of time. So they even just launched a new feature that helps you write job descriptions, making that process easier and quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions will apply. So now that we put Miller's playing time up for conversation, it's on the table. Who else deserves more playing time? Let's start at the running back and wide receiver position. We'll start on offense, and we'll switch sides to the ball, get to defense. Let me give you the snap count for this past weekend. At running back, 3 got into the game. Woody Marks, Quentin Joyner, Brian Jackson. Woody Marks took 50 snaps at running back. Joyner, 10 snaps. Joyner had one of the plays of the game, right? That 75-yard touchdown run. Wide receiver, Jacoby Lane, 42 snaps. Makai Lemon, 35 snaps. Deuce, 34. Zachariah, 25. Kyle Ford, 19. Jay Fair, 4. So that's your wide receiver group. Interesting, Jacoby Lane had the most snaps, and he deserves to be on the field as much as possible. But of those 42 snaps, he 2 catches. He was targeted just 4 times. 2 catches for 18 yards. Not a lot of production from your quote unquote number 1 receiver. I mentioned Quentin Joyner, only 10 snaps, but again, he only rushed the ball 3 times, 82 yards. I'm not saying you need to take snaps away from Woody, who is by far USC's best running back right now. 20 rushing attempts, 111 yards. But yeah, I think you want a little bit more balance there, right? I encourage you running the ball more. So if you want to keep Woody with 20 per game, that's fine. I think we can get Quentin Joyner up to 10. Shouldn't be that difficult. I'd love to see a perfect 30-30, 30 passes, 30 runs. In a perfect world, maybe that'll happen. We don't live in a perfect world. But the number I want you to focus on from the wide receivers, Makai Lemon, he had the second most snaps, tied with Kyron Hudson at 35. Deuce Robinson, 34. Makai Lemon was USC's leading receiver. 6 catches, 73 yards. He was targeted 9 times. That's a good ratio, 6 out of 9. Kyron Hudson, the other leading receiver, 4 catches, 36 yards. He was targeted 5 times. So, and he also had one of the 2 touchdowns. Quentin had the other. Quentin Joyner. So I know I'm flip-flopping back and forth here. When it comes to the running backs, is Joyner not getting more snaps because of his pass blocking? I don't know. But when you compare it to Woody Marks, who had 20 snaps on the field, he was only asked to pass block 5 times. And on one of those, he got called for a hold. Just kind of laying it all out there. I think we need to see more Makai Lemon. I mean, obviously, we're seeing more Makai, and he's starting to prove that he can be one of USC's most productive wide receivers. Remember, I told you, this guy plays the game like Amon-Ra St. Brown does. Dude's not afraid to go over the middle. Physical, good hands, and pretty good speed, too. At tight end, you had Cade Eldridge, 31 snaps. Walker Lyons, who actually started, 14 snaps. Didn't get a lot of production out of the tight end group as far as pass catching goes. In fact, how about nothing? Yeah, I'm looking at the receiving numbers right now. Nothing. They were used primarily for run blocking and helping to pass protect. It kind of gives you an idea of what the quarterback position is dealing with. Constantly under pressure. And in this game, you didn't have your tight end available. Let's look at the offensive line real quick before we flip sides of the ball. Elijah Page, the starting 5, they all played the same amount, 60 snaps. What's interesting about this, Penn State is being credited, according to Pro Football Focus, with 15 quarterback pressures. You had 4 each from defensive end Zane Durant, and then, defensive tackle Zane Durant, and defensive end Abdul Carter. Each of them had 4. When you're figuring out, who do they come against on USC's offensive line? Well, 10 of those 15 pressures, 4 are being tagged to Elijah Page, 3 to Jonah Monheim, 2 to Alani Noah, and 1 to Mason Murphy. Unfortunately, that one resulted in the sack. Emmanuel Pignon is by far right now playing the best on USC's offensive line, statistically. This would be the second game in a row where, according to PFF, Pro Football Focus, he hasn't allowed a pressure. And before I switch sides to the defensive side of the ball, this is just a random number. In fact, Eric McKinney could put this list together over at wearesc.com. That's where you're going to go when you're done making this episode of Locked on USC, your first listen every day. Check this out. We're talking about the passing game. There are 12 teams this season left. 12 teams left without a 50-yard pass play. Air Force, Baylor, Buffalo, Florida International, Illinois, Iowa, Memphis, Michigan, Minnesota, South Carolina, Tulsa, USC. And if that wound says, ow, that hurts, let me put a little salt in that wound. As of this point, UCLA already has 2 plays of 50 yards or more. Let that sink in. All right, defensive line. Guess who had the most snaps? Devin Tompkins, 52. Then you had Jamil Muhammad, 44. Braylon Shelby, 43. Anthony Lucas, 38. Which, by the way, Penn State, on the first snap of the game, tried to take him out of the game. Dirty, low block that didn't get called. The Big Ten referees, they are terrible. I'm not going to let that go. That bone is in my mouth, and I'm not letting go. Every day I see something new and I'm like, oh my God, they suck. Gavin Meyer, 36 snaps. Nate Clifton, 34. Kobe Pepe, 29. Sam Green, 16. Solo Solomon Tuliapupu, 10. And Jade Abasiri, 9. You'll say, well, why didn't Gavin Meyer play as many as he normally does? And I think this is one of the reasons why Devin Tompkins played as a few more than anticipated. Gavin missed part of the game during the middle portion with an injury. He did come back in, but he was wearing a big brace on his left arm. Sam Green, I think, earned more playing time. He had 16 snaps, and he was really productive out there. He was getting into the backfield, creating some pressure. But still, no sacks from this defensive end group this year. Even though I think, and I know he'll tell you, he should have finished that playoff against Drew LR. Should have had that one on Saturday. Just unfortunately didn't. Linebacker, Easton Mascarenas Arnold, 71. Mason Cobb, 66. Anthony Beavers Jr., 20. Desmond Stevens, the second, 15. That's a lot of snaps for EMA, Easton Mascarenas. Mason Cobb, same. I do wonder how much success Eric Gentry would have had in this game had he been available. And I also have to imagine that Desmond Stevens, his playing time, is going to go way up. It's going to increase. Big time. Just like that interception. Big time. He dropped deep. He was at the line of scrimmage. And then he dropped back into zone coverage. And it was deep middle. And he played his gap perfectly. I don't think the quarterback expected him to be there. He snatched it, returned it for 42 yards? Whatever the return was. I'm making the number up in my head. But I think you're going to see more of him. And I think that's why Rajon Davis elected to redshirt this year. Saw the writing on the wall. Big Rajon Davis fan. Just saying. There's a reason why Rajon still has one more game left before he played 4 games this year. He can still play if he wants to. Defensive back, you had 9. You actually had 11. Deuce Robinson, Jacoby Lane played a couple snaps there in that prevent defense, Hail Mary situation. So Kamari Ramsey, 71 snaps. Achille Arnold, 66. Jalen Smith, 59. Zion Branch, 42. It's a lot. John Humphrey, 39. Greedy Vance, 31. DeCarlos Nicholson, 17. Bryson Shaw, 14. Prophet Brown, 10. And I mentioned Deuce and Jacoby with 2 each. Level rotation at defensive back. The Penn State wide receivers, they didn't do a whole lot. They weren't doing the damage. That was all done with the tight end, Kyler Warren. But the one play that really stands out of his 17 receptions for 220 yards, he was wide open on all of them, almost all of them. The one that he wasn't that wide open was the one that was actually covered decent by Zion Branch. He got lost a little bit. It was a double pass, so I can understand maybe your eyes getting lost for a split second. But he was there when the ball was delivered, in the end zone, and he just needs to make a better play, either on the ball when it's in the air or punch at it when the guy's catching it. I think he was kind of caught in between. Next Saturday, USC at Maryland. We're going to see who earned more playing time after the coaches review film. But there you go. You're starting to see players, a lot of increase in playing time from guys you might not have anticipated. Devin Tompkins, it looks like his time has arrived. When was the last time you went to a concert, comedy show, any live event, USC game? Basketball's coming up. Yeah, the USC basketball season starting. Laker season starting. I'm still on strike, sorry. But Game Time, if you want to get a ticket, Game Time is going to filter out all the fluff. It's only going to show you the best deals available. Great seats to choose from. That's pretty cool. You're not going to waste your time. So, one of my favorite features at Game Time, in fact, it's probably my favorite feature, is their view your seat. So if you're saying, all right, well, I want to pick this one right here, you know what's great? It'll zoom in, and if you say you want that ticket, it'll show you your view. No risk. You know what you're getting before you check out. And with the Game Time guarantee, it always means you're getting the best price. So if you find tickets in the same row or same section and row for less, they're going to credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, I'm going to give you a few minutes of recruiting news before we check out of this episode of Locked On USC. That's why you hung around. Not why you hung around, but anytime you see recruiting news, I know my viewers and listeners want to hear what's going on. Well, Saturday wasn't all bad news, okay? Sunday afternoon, USC got a big-time commitment from 2026 defensive end, rush edge from the state of Illinois. His name is Braden Jones. He committed to USC. His commitment over the weekend, his visit over the weekend obviously went really well. The family was sold. And he's from Chicago. Typically, those guys, if they're really good, they're good enough to play for USC. That means they're also good enough to play for Notre Dame. Guess what? Notre Dame was in the lead for the 134th overall prospect and number 14 edge in the country according to On3's top 300 ranking. USC made an offer to Jones back in May. Excuse me. And then they made a visit to a school. This commitment to USC, it's taking Notre Dame by surprise. They thought they had him. Now they don't. I'll take that win anytime. I'll take a win versus Notre Dame later this year as well on the field. So as of today, right now, when you're listening, watching this episode of Locked on USC, they have the number 2 ranked class for 2026. That they have commitments from the aforementioned Braden Jones. You've got Viliami Mwala, defensive lineman. You've got 3-star cornerback Madden Reardon, who was also at the game Saturday. You have the 4-star cornerback Brandon Lockhart. You've got 4-star rush edge Xavier Griffin. You've got the wide receiver Jamiron Baker, and you have 3-star athlete Joshua Holland. We'll see who's still around when it's time for those guys to sign on the dotted line, which, by the way, you don't do a national letter of intent anymore. You just sign your financial aid papers. So if that's the case, sign them immediately. Get these players locked in. Don't let them look around. We'll see how that whole thing plays out. But again, no more No more. Yeah, well, there is NIL, but there's no more letter of intent signature needed. Those faxes, throw away your fax machine. Don't need it anymore. There was a lot of recruits at the game Saturday. A lot of guys for the 2026 and 2027 class, but there was also a bunch of guys from 2025. Corey Sims, the wide receiver from Missouri, he was one of them. He had a really good time. He was really impressed. He said, quote, the environment inside the Coliseum was unmatched. And you know, he's planning to stick around. He's going to remain with the class. He was really positive about it. I was standing right near him at the end of the game when the Penn State players were going up the tunnel to celebrate, and they were shouting at Corey Sims. They saw him. So did some of the Penn State coaches. Corey was whooping it up. You know, they want me. They want me. I know. Kind of an awkward look. Penn State's coaches shouldn't be recruiting inside the Coliseum. I get it. It's how the game is played. Nevertheless, kind of. Anyways, I'll shut up. That's it for this episode of Locked on USC. There's more recruiting news coming. I'll let it trickle out during the week. There's probably going to be another commitment coming up. I don't know. When you're watching this episode, it might happen. We'll see. So until that next episode of Locked on USC, everyone, you know what to do.